If you're rolling up to this video looking like this, you haven't got much sleep, and your wallet's feeling a little light, then congratulations, you survived February. This was truly a whirlwind of a month, between Suicide Squad's predictable crash and burn, to then Helldivers 2 showing them how it's done, and by that I mean putting out a great game that no one could play for like a week. Then Skull and Bones came out, and some people actually kind of liked it. But forget about all of that, because we're gonna be playing Shadow of the Erdtree this freaking June? Yeah, we are so back. But I'm glancing past a bunch of stuff, like all the co-op games that came out last month, what co-op games are coming out in the next months, and any co-op news in between. It's the Co-op Monthly for February, let's get started.
So many co-op games came out in the month of February that if I covered all of them, I'd probably be here all day. So I'm going to hit the biggest releases, and that should be more than enough. Starting with Granblue Fantasy Relink, a game I am dying to come back to later in the year. This is an action-oriented JRPG with a short 15 to 20 hour campaign you play in solo with a separate co-op mission-based set of activities. It's done well for itself with an 81 on OpenCritic and a very positive 90% from users on Steam. The best way to describe the co-op part of the game is a Monster Hunter-like, and it has plenty of content to spare. Don't be fooled by the game's binary nature. I think IGN's George Yang summarized it best when he said, "Granblue Fantasy Relink has a short story, fantastic battle system, and fun multiplayer options that help it stand out." Again, Gabe and I did miss this one due to timing, but I've got it circled in our calendar for later in the year to come back to, so here's my opportunity to suggest you sub so you can hear our thoughts later. Hellcard is a smaller indie title combining co-op deck building into a roguelike structure. Because of that, it doesn't have a ton of critic reviews, so we'll turn to Steam, where it currently is sitting at a very positive 84% from users. We've always admired this one from afar, and if its unique premise sounds interesting, it's probably worth checking out at a generous $20 entry point. And now it's time for the moratorium on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. After a pre-release build-up that will forever go down as the ultimate red flag campaign, the title dropped to a weak 60 from critics, and wait a second, is that a mostly positive 79% from Steam users? Well, I'll be. I think this makes a little bit of sense. The best way I could summarize the discourse around this title is that it can be fun, the combat isn't necessarily bad, but $70 with the egregious microtransaction model and a short 10-hour campaign is a big ask. I think it's safest to say that we can wait until we're a little farther along into the free content pipeline that Rocksteady has promised before you decide if this is worth your time and money. I don't think it'll ever have a Cyberpunk level comeback, but it can at least become a better version than what we got at launch. Keeping the downer train rolling, let's talk about Foamstars. First off, yes, this is a mostly PvP game, but much like its off compared to counterpart Splatoon, the game did ship with a PvE wave-based mode you can play with friends. So that's my excuse for talking about it here, but it's gonna be a little bit short-lived because Foamstars did not bring the juice with a weak 60 from critics. General sentiment is the game can be fun, but doesn't have a lot in place to keep you coming back for more, and in this day and age, it means it's probably about to be flushed down the drain in the coming months. Okay, so that was a bit sad, but you know what I do when I'm down? I drink a piping hot cup of Liberty.
I'll get it going.
Wait, you just wait. Oh, yes!
Yes.
Helldivers 2 has landed, and much like the democracy it promises to bring, has had about as strong a launch as you can possibly get for a live service co-op title. The game has surpassed several huge titles in concurrent player count and has peaked around 450k as of me writing this block. Critics are sitting at a strong 82, while players have the title at a mostly positive 77%. We also reviewed it and said it was a co-op classic in the making, with excellent combat, co-op centered gameplay, and a tier 1 sense of humor. But we, like the players and critics, were hampered by tumultuous online performance in this launch window. The team at Arrowhead upped the server capacity last week, and it's definitely helped, so just keep an eye on things if you're still unsure if you want to risk it. But if you just don't care and want to join the fight for democracy, the co-op bros will be the first to tell you you're making the right choice. Amongst all the other titles that came out last month, I wouldn't blame you if you forgot that we actually got a brand new Mario game in February. Well, actually it's a remake, which seems to be the reason it's received a 77 overall from critics. That's not bad by any means, but the Mario vs. DK series has never been a breadwinner for the team. Of course, we're mentioning it on this show because they added on a co-op mode with Toad, which I've read in several reviews is a real highlight. Certainly a title worth grabbing if you have a younger gamer who likes Mario or puzzle titles. For once, I'm gonna leave the jokes about delays at the door and welcome Skull and Bones as the fresh title that received a whopping 61 on OpenCritic, barely eking out a point over Suicide Squad and Foamstars. Like Gabe mentioned, we have heard of some people enjoying this title. A 61 doesn't always mean it's just completely unplayable. It actually sounds like a pretty similar story to what we're seeing with Suicide Squad. There is fun to be had, but the package as a whole doesn't come together. With a $70 price tag and additional microtransactions over a sorry excuse for a campaign, it's gonna be a hard sell to make. Especially considering Black Flag is out there for like probably $12. I would strongly consider waiting for this to make its way onto some sort of, quote unquote, free subscription service before dragging 3 friends along to play with you. Nightingale has finally made its way into early access on the 20th of this month, and like a lot of early access titles, is a bit of a mixed bag. For one, it has a mixed 61% on Steam due to its lack of an offline mode and consistent network crashes, rendering the game unplayable for some. To their credit, the developers have acknowledged this and promised to bring an offline mode as quickly as they can. Putting that aside for a second, there are still some negatives along with some glowing positives. Many have bemoaned the early grind and called it out for missing some much needed quality of life standards we typically see in survival games, and I'm sure those will come. But on the other side, I've also heard if you get past that, the hopping realms mechanic is an inspired take on the genre. All in all, this sort of screams wait for the 1.0, or at least a more stable playing experience. I take it as the game has potential and could be worth returning to later, and that's not altogether a bad thing when it comes to early access. Sons of the Forest is on the other end of its early access journey, finally reaching 1.0 on the 22nd after a year-long build-up. Its recent review rating on Steam has it at a very positive 89% after 5,000 user ratings, a great mark to have. Critics are still finishing out their 1.0 playthroughs before giving out review scores, but your boys are here to tell you from first-hand experience this is a great survival horror, 100% worth your time if that's your thing. We played through the entire game at early access, and came back here again at 1.0 to beat it all over. It's still got some rough edges, but the sandbox created on the island is a blast to play on with your friends, and the mystery that unfolds makes for a surprising experience. Look for a full review in the next week or two. Every once in a while, Gabe and I have that one co-op game that keeps slipping outside of our radar. I mean, it's not easy remembering all the co-op games that we cover on a month-to-month basis. Last Epoch fits that bill perfectly, so I'm finally going to give it the respect it deserves here, since it was released into 1.0 on the 21st after like a 5-year early access period. The oversimplification is that we call this a Diablo-like, as you can see from the top-down ARPG gameplay, but it actually sits somewhere between that one and Path of Exile, which is also just like Diablo, but for like mega nerds. It has a strong 79 on OpenCritic, but notably a mixed 62% recent reviews on Steam, with an overall mostly positive user rating on Steam. Doing a precursory scroll through the negative user Steam rating is mostly due to network issues, which has certainly been a theme this month on multiple games. Hopefully it can right the ship and bring those numbers back up, because at its core it looks like a competent option if the Blizzard behemoth has jaded you in the past. Finishing off the month, we have Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons remake. It's a 2-player adventure title where you guide, you guessed it, 2 brothers on an epic journey. The original was actually a single-player game where you controlled both players at the same time, with the idea being you could experience co-op play alone. This remake bucks that philosophy and just gives you 2-player local co-op. It seems to have worked for the most part, receiving a strong 81 from OpenCritic, with most outlets praising the story and visuals. Notably, the PC port seems to be suffering from some technical errors, which is a bummer knowing that's the only place you can play online with remote play. So if you're planning on playing there, maybe wait a little bit until you do.
March is slowing down in terms of co-op releases, thank God, but not by much, and there's more than a couple games here we're pretty stoked about. Last month, I mentioned how Guards received a new demo on Steam. This is a 4-player online co-op fantasy FPS with a whole lot of goofiness thrown in. And if you went ahead and checked out the game, then you're in luck because it's launching on March 1st. Yeah, right around the time of this video, so we'll follow back up on it next month. And hopefully we can find some time to check out the game for ourselves because it does look like a ton of fun. One of our most anticipated releases for next month is the Outlast Rials. We were actually among the first players to test out the game during its first playtest 2 Halloweens prior, and we were instantly hooked by it. The game is now finally releasing its 1.0 update alongside its launch on all consoles bar the Switch on March 5th. The new update brings with it a host of improvements, but the most notable is a brand new trial set in a toy factory. Yeah, that's sure to be just a wonderful, wholesome time. I mean, who doesn't love toys, right guys? Next on the calendar is Contra Operation Galuga, always a fun title to say, the latest entry in the legendary Contra franchise. This title is a brand new game that features up to 4-player co-op both online and local. Operation Galuga looks to be taking all the best features of previous Contra games, but placing that in a modern package. Now that I think about it, my dad is actually a big Contra fan, so maybe this is our opportunity to bond while we both wield deadly flamethrowers. If you're interested to hear more, not about my dad, about the game, then check out IGN's preview of Contra Operation Galuga ahead of its March 12th release on all platforms. You know, Team Xbox has taken more than a couple L's the past couple years, but I for one think 2024 is the year as all the dominoes are finally lining up. And one of those dominoes is Lightyear Frontier. This is a farming game featuring 4-player online co-op and it's launching onto early access on Steam, Xbox, and Game Pass on March 19th. Farming games are a dime a dozen nowadays, but Lightyear Frontier is doing things a little differently as you do pretty much all of your farming and exploring while inside a mech. It honestly looks super cool. IGN actually did a final preview on this as well, so check that out for more details. So last month we talked about how Rise of the Ronin seems all but certain to be an online co-op title. I say all but certain because the team have yet to confirm that in any of their marketing, but it is listed on their website and on the PlayStation Store page for the game. If you don't know what this game is, it's an open world third-person title coming from the team behind Wolong Fallen Dynasty and the Neo franchise. It's easily one of our most anticipated games, even before we caught wind of its co-op functionality. Here's hoping we get a deep dive into the co-op stuff as we get closer to its March 22nd release on PlayStation 5. Coming from the team that brought you South Park: The Stick of Truth, South Park: Phone Destroyer, and that third South Park title I refuse to say live on the internet, you guessed it, is South Park: Snow Day. This latest game is coming to next-gen consoles, Switch, and PC on March 26. It'll feature 4-player co-op online where you and your friends can partake in all sorts of shenanigans, and credit where it's due, it actually looks like a ton of fun. Go Fight Fantastic is the game we covered during last summer's Steam Next Fest. We had a great time with this game and have been waiting for a release date ever since. Luckily, we finally have one. Go Fight Fantastic will be hitting all platforms on March 26. If you don't have this on your radar, you definitely should. It's a 1 to 3 player hack and slash featuring both local and online modes. The combat is super snappy with some cool character abilities and it's all tied together in a nice hand-drawn look. Definitely add this to your wishlist if it piques your interest. Another sci-fi-esque farming game coming this month is Cozynauts. This one releases on the 30th and features 2-player local co-op. The theme this time around is building a colony in what looks to be Mars. It features a fun chibi art style as well as some base building and survival mechanics. Finally, to wrap up this section, we have the release of Godsworn, a real-time strategy game set in a fantasy world featuring 2-player online co-op. The game is launching onto early access on March 28, so be sure to wishlist the title if it looks up your alley. Before we move on to our next segment, let me take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor for this video. You! That's right, you, or rather the you from the future that decided to support us on Patreon. We recently launched our Patreon for those looking for a way to support the channel and also getting a couple cool benefits on the side, like access to our monthly newsletter, our Patreon exclusive Q&A video, or even a 10% off merch code. Plus, each tier grants you a producer credit at the end of every video. If you choose to support us at any of these tiers, a huge thank you to you. We love doing this channel and this Patreon helps to make that happen. Now let's get back to the show.
Let's keep this jam-packed February monthly moving and start by talking about the news on games that already are released. Sony's State of Play at the end of January was devoid of any co-op news outside of V Rising getting its console announcement for PS5. We didn't get a firm release date outside of a 2024 window, but the fact that it's coming to Sony consoles means 1.0 is certainly going to be the course of action, and the devs have targeted Q2 of this year, so I'd expect to hear something soon on an exact date. For those who don't know, this is a combo survival and ARPG title where you play as a vampire with your squad, and it is utterly fantastic. Hoping we can hop back in and there's no overlap with another title that is also coming out in Q2 of this year. Not gonna name any names yet, but we'll talk about it soon. Arc Runner also got its console release date for April 18th, but has already been on Steam for about a year now. It's an action roguelite with a neon cyberpunk setting that looks to deliver some fun action in online co-op. It doesn't have a ton of buzz on Steam with only a 71% mostly positive after a few hundred reviews, but might be a smaller title worth checking out with your friends. Raven's Watch is inching closer and closer to that 1.0 launch with its latest edition, the Dark Tales update. It adds more stories and talents for each hero, and new servers to help with co-op stability. We've still got this penciled in as one of our most anticipated co-op titles of 2024, considering we played it during its early access launch and we were very impressed with how well the game played. Expect to see that in Q3 of this year, which is pretty barren for release dates, so couldn't ask for a better window. Wizard with a Gun has had an interesting month, where every day they reveal a new gun coming to the game in the eventual Bounty of Guns update. The reveal trailers are a fun Who's That Gun play on the Pokemon interlude that hits all the right nostalgia notes. Not sure what the end goal is, but I like where it's headed, and Wizard with a Gun is a title that didn't get as much pop as anticipated at launch despite being pretty fun at times in co-op play. Stardew Valley's hotly anticipated 1.6 update got its release for March 19th, and it'll include a ton of new content, plus an upgrade to 8-player co-op on PC. Just another excuse to try out this all-time classic with your friends. Now that the dust has settled on the overplayed drama that is Xbox releasing titles on other consoles, we can talk about Grounded coming to the Switch and PlayStation on the 16th of April. It will also drop its 1.0 with the new launch, which they have been a little bit quiet on. Looks like maybe some new weapons or enemies, but it helps to give old and new players an excuse to play what is said to be a stellar survival sandbox experience. Okay everybody, we can finally talk about the biggest news drop of the month, Elden Ring's first gameplay reveal of Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, plus its release date for June 22nd. We loved every frame we saw here, with new enemies, locations, equipment, story. It was just perfect. The DLC looks to be as big as the Limgrave area of the original map, which means you're probably sinking a solid 30 to 40 hours here. Yes, that is larger than most AAA titles, but this is FromSoft, they're built different. You can 100% expect the boys to be lost in this for the entire summer, and here's your friendly reminder to hit up VOTVideo's channel because the lore is running deep here, and I am all for it. Praise the sun, my friends, we're almost back to Elden Ring.
Between Steam Next Fest a couple weeks ago and the recent Nintendo Partner Direct, there was plenty of news for upcoming titles, so let's dive right in. In case you missed it, Steam held its first Next Fest of the year, so I'm gonna briefly cover 5 co-op demos that were making the rounds so that you can add these to your wishlist and follow up on them during the following Next Fest. First up is Rotwood. This is a 1 to 4 player hack and slash coming from the team behind Don't Starve, and it features both local and online co-op. I actually got the chance to play this demo myself, and we did a whole preview video on the channel, so go check that out for my thoughts on Rotwood. Next up is Serum. This is a survival game set in a post-apocalyptic world featuring 4-player online co-op. The main gimmick here is that your character is dependent on this serum to stay alive, so you have to harvest it from plants or animals. It looks pretty cool, and there's also a chance that the demo is still available for you to try as it was extended, so go check it out. This next game needs a little bit of context up front. So last year, a demo for a dungeon crawling PvEVP extraction game called Dark and Darker was blowing up on Steam. It looked like it was gonna be a surefire hit until it got embroiled in a whole lot of legal drama and removed from Steam. I won't get into the details of that, but in a funny full circle moment, a new demo for a completely different game is picking up where Dark and Darker left off. This is Dungeonborn, and it's pretty much the same concept as Dark and Darker, except with some noticeably better graphics and hopefully a lot less legal troubles. The demo for this one, as predicted, blew up as well, so add it to your wishlist to keep up with this title. So Co-Ridden is a game I've really wanted to try out, and thankfully the demo is still up. In this game you play as a shapeshifter that can take the form of any beast you defeat. It's an RPG where you can level up your shifter as well as your beast forms, and the best part is it features 4-player co-op both online and locally. As an added bonus, you can even ride on top of your co-op partner's beast form, which yeah, sounds pretty sick. Definitely check this one out as it's slated to release sometime this year. Lastly, let's wrap this up with Paladins. This is a choose-your-own-adventure RPG title featuring 4-player co-op both online and locally. It's one we've covered many times on this series, but I'm happy to give it yet another shout out because I think a lot of people would enjoy this one, so be sure to add it to your wishlist if it piques your interest. Nintendo finally held their long-rumored partner showcase / direct, and out of it we got the confirmation that World of Goo 2 will support 4-player local co-op and is releasing on May 23rd. This looks like a great family co-op game, so all of you co-op dads out there, you better be taking notes. Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, got a release date for October 10th, and it features 4-player co-op both online and locally. Like its title, this game has a lot going on. There's a lot of Animal Crossing energy here, some crafting, cooking, fighting a dragon or two, and it honestly looks like a pretty good time. I don't know why, but something tells me a good chunk of you popped for the announcement of Suika's co-op mode. If you've been passing the Switch back and forth playing Suika, this $5 DLC is for you, as now you can face off in 3 different modes. Does this enter Suika into the best DLC category of the year? Yeah, I think so. Before we enter our last segment of the show, here's 2 stray news bits that didn't come out of NetsFest or the Direct. First off, Earth's Defense Force 6 has been delayed to this summer. The game was originally released to Japanese markets in 2022, so it's a bummer to see its worldwide release delayed further. But hey, if you've been waiting for 2 years, what's a couple more months, I guess? Finally, No Rest for the Wicked, the upcoming action RPG from the team behind the Ori games, received a whole month's worth of coverage from IGN's first series. The game, which is launching onto Early Access, will feature 3-player co-op online when it launches sometime this year. We haven't got a deep dive into co-op play just yet, but I still think it's worth watching some of these videos to get a feel for the game.
Actually, it's time to hit the breaking news drop because we just got some brand new spanking news for the launch date for No Rest for the Wicked. There was a huge 25-minute deep dive recently that culminated in us learning that the game will be released into early access on April 18th. They also gave us a roadmap, but it doesn't give any dates yet, and it's important to note it doesn't seem to be launching with multiplayer. And of course, this is early access, so you're only getting a chunk of the game at launch. The detailed breakdown didn't include any information on co-op either, but I did read on the Steam page a little snippet that says, share your world and progress with up to 3 friends by your side in the campaign's online co-op mode. Every quest, boss, and square foot of Isola Sacra is theirs to share with you, or they can simply venture off and do as they please. If you read between the lines, there's a lot of good information there. We'll be sure to report back later with more details because this is looking to be a top-tier title in our books. Finally, we're coming to a close with a handful of brand new game announcements to cover. Servonauts is the latest Overcooked-like, serving 4-player local co-op mayhem on Switch or PC sometime soon. It looks a little more puzzle-focused than its contemporaries, with the premise forcing you to align pipes to fuel your customers' gas on a gas station set in space. An over-the-top premise is no surprise for this genre, and it looks to be a pretty good time. Primal Planet is a pixel art Metroidvania made by one person. Yes, that's right, one person made this entire game, and it includes 2-player local co-op. The game looks to include some survival and crafting mechanics too, and is set to release in 2025. We love getting to highlight smaller games on the monthly, so strongly consider wishlisting this title if it looks appealing to you and your friends. Riot's League of Legends spinoff Project L finally got a title in 2XKO, which doesn't exactly pop off the page, but will probably grow on us with time. But why are we mentioning a fighting game in the co-op monthly? Because one of the title's main gimmicks is that you can actually play the game in 2-player co-op, as the title is a tag team fighter. Think Mario Kart Double Dash meets Street Fighter. Gabe and I love multiverses, but have never gotten into like a mainline non-platform fighter, so this might be our first real attempt when they drop 2XKO in their 2025 release window. Nintendo's Direct also gave us a few co-op game announcements, starting with Sword Art Online Fractured Daydream, the most anime possible title they could have gone with here. It's coming not just to Switch but PC, PlayStation, and Xbox sometime later this year, and looks to be a full-on action title with 20-player online co-op. Obviously, Sword Art has always been a series rife for a solid video game adaptation, and this looks like the latest attempt to pull that off. I don't know if it hits that sort of Monster Hunter vibe. I could see it actually happening, and both Gabe and I have dabbled in this anime in the past. Let's hope that I am onto something here with the whole Monster Hunter vibe, and this isn't just a half-hearted cash grab. We also got our introductory look at Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, which is the first brand new Monkey Ball title in what has to be like at least a decade. It'll include 4-player local co-op for the campaign, love to see it, but also a 16-player online competitive mode. Are we looking at our first Monkey Ball Battle Royale? I'd be down if it was. Mark your calendars for June 25th when it launches exclusively on Nintendo consoles. Nintendo's quote-unquote one more thing at their partner showcase will be Our Last Story as well, and they announced Endless Ocean Luminous, a follow-up to the sleeper Wii hit Endless Ocean. And this isn't the co-op mode I bet you expected, it's actually a 30-player online shared expedition into the ocean depths. Not sure who exactly can wrangle 30 friends together for this, but hey, the option is there. It's coming on May 2nd exclusively to the Switch.
Thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate your continued support of this video series. If you like what we're doing here, consider subscribing, following us on our socials, or joining our Discord server. And if you want to go the extra mile, please check out our Patreon and merch store. You can find the links for everything down below. An extra thank you to all of our Patreon producers. We'll catch you next time on another episode of The Co-op Bros.